Good morning, everyone. A few days ago, maybe a week now, I had promised someone on a Facebook fountain pen group that I would do a video about the Parker 21. And I'll wait for you to stop laughing. Okay, now can I start? May I start? Yes, the Parker 21. The Parker 21 is their least quality, the most affordable, we'll put it that way, the cheapest, let's be more exact, pen that they made that sort of imitated the Parker 51. There was a Parker 51, and there was the 51 Special, and then there was the 41, and then there was the Deluxe something, and it all turns into sort of this mushiness of nomenclature that I don't pay any attention to. It's like seeing, a number on the back of some sort of car. It's a Toyota XY250 or whatever that number is. How many chromosomes it has. I honestly don't know. But this pen is a 21. And it's a 21 that I bought from myself. It was in my shop, ready to be sold to someone. And I said, gee, it actually writes kind of nice. And it has initials on it, MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital. Well, that could be Morris, George Herbertson or something, but MGH is a common thing we hear here in Massachusetts. Initials we hear in Massachusetts. So the problem with a Parker 21 is the plastic that they made this pen out of was not great, and cracks appear. Now, back when these were made, why did I do that? Why did I shade that with cross-hatching? I'm going to show what cracks look like, and I can't, whatever. Here's the nib. The feed is under here. The opening for the nib and the feed is much bigger than the Parker 51. And why that is, I don't know. Is it because they could use a little tiny bit of less plastic? Could be, who knows. And then the nib also is much bigger. It's, looks like that rather than like this. This is more of a tube, and this is a flatter thing that looks more like a regular nib. I don't know. Maybe it was easier to manufacture or put together, or who knows what. But anyway, when you find a Parker, if you were at a pen show, we have to say something less focused, because at a pen show you see only you don't see, it's not as random as the outside world. If you were at a flea market that had 10 vendors, each of whom emptied out a couple of houses and had pens in a pile in a corner from each of those houses, and let's just pretend that there was a bunch of these pens. Probably a good 3/4 of them might have a crack. No, that's not true, because if they had a crack, the person would have thrown them away and bought a new one. But anyway, they have cracks. These pens have cracks. Sometimes you see them back here in the barrel, but 9 times out of 10, if a Parker 21 has a crack, it's going to be up here or over here, or all three of them, or there'll be a big chip missing. And I can only think that that's because the plastic was not as resilient as the 51. So let's pretend that at some point you found one that didn't have a crack, like this one. There isn't really, if I had a blindfold on and was given 10 pens and 5 of them were 21s and 5 of them were 51s, I might be able to tell if I did this and could distinguish that this clutch ring was a little different than the 51. The clutch ring on a 51 goes down like this. The middle part is depressed from the sides. On this one, the clutch ring thing is above. They still make the same kind of sounds that a 51 makes, metal against metal here, plastic against plastic there. They still have that aural, A-U-R-A-L, satisfaction to them. But in terms of how they write and how they fit in the hand, there's not really a lot of difference. And at a pen show where you can maybe find many of these pens that don't have cracks, and you have, let's say you have $100 to spend and you want to spend it on many pens, couple pens, put a down payment on one very expensive pen, and you had the choice between a Parker, ignore the caps. I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to hear the fact that this is a sterling cap on an aerometric pen. I don't want to hear that. This is even a Parker Special, I think. It doesn't have a gold nib. No, it has a gold nib. I don't want to hear that. I happen to like the way this looks, so sue me. If you were at a pen show and you had $100 and you wanted to buy a 51-like product and you wanted to buy a flexible nibbed product, you could easily do that by buying one of these for maybe half or a quarter of one of these, and essentially they write the same. And use the rest of your money to buy a flexible nibbed pen. Parker 51s and their siblings, like this, their nephew, are a very interesting pen for many, many reasons. But 9 times out of 10, they're going to write in a very predictable manner. You'll get one that has a fine nib or one that is a broader nib. You'll find one that is this color or that color, but for the most part, they write pretty much the same. You don't need a gold nib, really, in a pen that doesn't allow for flexibility. Yes, 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 I know. Write your answers below. But, and I'm using dirty water here, you can tell, because you can barely see what I'm doing. But if you get a good Parker 21 that hasn't been screwed up or dropped or whatever, chances are it'll write pretty well. The Parker 51 has the gold nib, though sometimes they have something called the 51 Special, which doesn't have a gold nib. Whatever. The Parker 21. Anyway, back to this one. Yeah, buy one. As much as I love this pen and don't really like this pen, only because it's an imitation of this one. It's the, here's reading War and Peace in Russian on a first edition, and this is the Cliff Notes of that same book. No, it's not that bad. I love the 51. The only problem with this pen is the cracks, yes, and the other problem is it's an imitation of this. And that's the thing that annoys most pen collectors, I think, is it's an imitation of something that's so great. And the second thing, they're almost always broken, cracked. I had a pen collector who only liked these pens, and they had to be in RR condition. His initials were RR, and he used his full name, but in correspondence, it was RR, was how we would describe it. And as this was coming off the assembly line at Parker, and the person, the last person to do anything was the person that put the little cellophane price sticker on it or something. As soon as it left his or her hand and went further along the line to be packaged up and sent, that was where the RR condition was. It couldn't even leave the factory. And I said, oh, for God's sake, RR, can't you? It's so hard finding a pen that has plastic that isn't very good in perfect condition because the plastic isn't very good. Can I sell you instead a Parker 51? And it never worked. For some reason, I think it was a pen that he had been given as a bar mitzvah present or something, and it was something that he cherished and loved and wanted to only use that pen. The 51 was not part of that memory, so it had to be a 21. So get the 51 if you can afford it. Get a 21 if you want some of, maybe, I don't know, what percentage of the experience is the same as a 51 in terms of writing. I think in terms of writing, it's almost equal. In terms of holding in your hand and posting and capping and all that other kind of stuff. Is there a difference? I suppose if I got out my balance, I could find that one is heavier than the other and one is denser than the other. The caps are not interchangeable. I was just wondering if they're only slightly different in diameter and in length, but I don't think it's enough to interrupt your writing or interfere so anyway, there's nothing wrong with them. Now, all you pen collectors out there will tell me why you hate them so much. Someone posted that he had a bunch of them that he'd sell for $10 a piece. I had a bunch that I'd sell for $10 a piece too, but they almost all, in fact, all of them for $10 were cracked. To get one that isn't cracked is the hard part. Do the shell trick here. Which one do you want? Anyway, so much for that. 15 minutes wasted. No. Did I say anything important? Okay, I will later talk about these two pens. I can talk about them right now. These are my two most recent eBay buys. They're more or less the same pattern, same company. One clip is longer than the other. One pen is probably a little longer than the other. Whatever. They're almost identical in terms of diameter, except with wall. I think the only difference is the width, like the width of the cap is the width of the barrel on the next size up. It's very subtle. This pen, when I bought it, yes, I could see it had dings. They said it had dings. They said it had a name on it. It does have a name on it. They said it had a Waterman nib. It does have a Waterman nib. They did not, however, say that it doesn't screw on. The threads are off. I mean, it's stripped. So I may try to fuss with it, or I may ignore it, just keep it here on the desk. But what was interesting about it, it had a Waterman yellow keyhole nib. And the yellow is a relatively rare color. It meant for lefties, it was a rounded nib that meant a lefty could do this kind of stuff, right with a hook and push rather than pull the pen. So the nib actually is very much like Schaefer Waverly nibs. It has a slight upturned shape to it, and its ball of iridium is more spherical because you sometimes have to hold the pen, dig it into the paper. So, needs a sack. This one is slightly thinner and needs a sack and has a beautiful wall number 3 nib to it and all sorts of elaborate initials on the side. And I really like sterling silver. Sterling silver is my kind of color. I have more gold ones only because they made more of them, I think, by 3 times as much or something. You don't see the silver as much as you see the gold. And I really like them. Has a nice nib, and it will have a sack soon, and I'll be good to go. Here's another pen. I wonder if this is the same size. See? Is this the same size as that? I guess it is. Does this screw on? It does screw on. Okay, what's the difference between these two pens then? Same pattern. Oh God, see, this is why pen collecting is fun. This one, the pattern, yes, it has a big gold ding. Yes, it has a crack in the nib, in the back of the nib. This one has the pattern that starts with the pattern at the top and ends with the pattern at the bottom and then goes to nothing. This one has little latitudinal lines running across, going this way. Longitude would be that way. Latitudinal lines that sort of stop the design, and I think I prefer this to this. I like that. It's like a shirt cuff sticking out of, here's the herringbone suit, here's the white shirt, white cotton starched shirt there, and that's the little border. This one doesn't have that border. There's no border. There's no chain. There's no distinct end. Yes, there is a distinct end. It stops and then it goes to smooth. I like the lines, I think, on this particular pattern. Now in this pattern, see here you don't have the lines either. I think the lines really make it crisp, sharp. Starched shirt and herringbone. Hoodie with peanut butter and jelly stains all over the front of it, and wet drawstring ties, because the person, when they would be eating the sandwich, they would lift it off their lap and take one of the strings with them, and just nasty. Nice, nasty. No, they're both nice. And I can't wait to put a sack in this one. I'm not entirely in love with this. I think I will be in love with it when it tarnishes. It's just very, very... There's something about how deeply this is cut in that makes it look cheap. And I know that it won't look that way once it's tarnished a bit, but because it's so shiny, it doesn't have the subtlety of the beautiful, thin, shallow engraving here. It just sort of calls attention to itself. Now this has really sharp, tiny cuts into it. I think that's sort of the difference. This looks like it's engraved, and this looks more like they stamped it in with a hammer. It just has a crudeness to it, even though it's not. It's all hand engraved. This part, the initials, this is machine done, but there's just something about the shininess of it and the reflectivity that just shouts a little bit more. And this pen doesn't shout. It speaks in a very audible voice. As you see, also there's a difference in their little levers. And I don't know why they're different. Why did they... I mean, here they made it flat, and here it's this three-dimensional sort of thing. I don't know what was going on in that factory. Okay, now you just wasted 23 minutes and 56 seconds. Bye.